Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. We greet you. Sorry for starting a bit late. We had some connection issues on the other side. Please note, we are live on Sauma HD Radio this evening. Please come in and greet us and say hi. We are live on Sauma HD Radio. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Facebook. This is In His Grace and Mercy Thursday evening, the broadcast where we discuss a couple of issues. This has been a platform where we discuss from health issues, society issues, legal issues. So we thank you for waiting for us. I'm sorry about the connectivity issues and all that in it, but we are now fine. Everything is now going according to. Today, we are going to be talking about narcissistic personality disorder. That's what we're going to be talking about. And online, we have our psychologist. So let me properly, bring you up to speed. We have these talks with a senior clinical psychologist. Now it has been about a year plus, close to 2 years with him. Every month we have discussions with him. So they are on In His Grace and Mercy YouTube channel and Facebook. So today we thank the powers that be at Sauma HD Radio for again, and also we thank the Lord again for giving us the platform to use and the slot to use as we teach and as we broaden up. So today is supposed to be a debut on Sauma HD Radio on Thursday. We are usually live on 7 a.m. till 9 a.m. every Sunday. Now we'll start being live with what we've been doing from 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. every Thursday evening. So without further waste of time, we will be discussing personality disorder today. We've got our experts who's going to be joining us online, and the ones that are on the video streaming will be able to see the presentation. And then please ask questions. We can ask questions from In His Grace and Mercy platform. We can also ask questions as well on Sauma HD Radio, so that we can also get the answers of the questions we're asking about. Narcissistic personality disorder is one of those disorders that people are using this definition or using this diagnosis, rather, if I may say that loosely. Somebody will tell you, I think I'm dating a narcissistic, or I'm working with somebody who's narcissistic, and today we're about to be educated so that destiny's help or whatever that we're defining as narcissistic can be defined properly by the aspects. So today, as you and I get educated on In His Grace and Mercy on the Thursday evening sessions with our psychologist, Sean Zimunya. But before you teach us, you go right into it and present, and then at the end we'll have a Q&A session. Before you present, just reintroduce yourself to the new family that you are now broadcasting to, because Sauma HD Radio is an international platform. You hear it everywhere you are. You just press www.somahdradios.co.za. Myself, I'm Pastor Kekana. I am Dr. Kekana. So both a pastor and a medical doctor. For those that only listen to me on Sundays as a pastor, but I'm also a medical doctor, actually a specialist, a specialist surgeon. But today, we're not talking about any surgical things. We're talking about narcissistic personality disorder. Say, please introduce yourself, and when you're done introducing yourself, just hit right into it as I project your presentation on the screen. Good evening, sir. Welcome.
Good evening, Dr. Kekan, and good evening to everybody that's a part of the call. I think it would be remiss of me if I actually also don't say good morning, because I know I have a lot of family and friends that are tuning in from the United Kingdom, friends in Australia, and many other people around the world. So welcome to everybody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever applies to your particular time zone. So as has been stated, my name is Sean Zimunya. I'm a senior clinical social worker as well as independent consultant with a special interest in mental wellness, leadership development, employee wellness, a current PhD candidate as well, so an academic in the making. And I'm also quite interested in conflict resolution, anxiety, stress, and depression. This is the long and short of what I do, but I'm also considered to be a mental health expert on various platforms. So those of you in South Africa, you will from time to time hear my ugly voice on 5FM, on Metro FM, on SAFM, and various other radio platforms. I speak on many platforms, many podiums, and I do a lot of consultancy work in corporate South Africa, but also sometimes even in government agencies. That's the long and short of who I am. But I don't want to waste time. I want us to get right into it. So, what is narcissistic personality disorder? And as Dr. Kekana alluded to, many of us use that term quite loosely. What's of prime importance for me is for all of us to understand. It's actually a mental health condition that affects a person's self-worth, empathy, and relationships with others. Having said that it's a mental health condition, it also just follows that it's only a mental health specialist that can actually diagnose somebody with NPD in short. Yes, you may be able to pick up certain character traits that point to narcissism, and I'm not saying it wouldn't be. But for us to actually have a proper diagnosis, you would need to see a mental health specialist, either a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a clinical social worker, etc. Now, what does it do? It literally affects how they think, how they feel, and how they behave. A lot of the times they become quite dramatic, they exaggerate, they are emotional, quite intense as well, erratic and unpredictable. But the easiest definition of narcissistic personality disorder is actually the fact that this is somebody with an inflated sense of self importance. So they feel that they know it all. They feel that they are more important than everybody else. They feel that they are doing better than everybody else. And so they view themselves as such and they carry themselves as such. Nobody else knows anything except for themselves. And a lot of the times, many of these things that they do are hidden behind logic. So a lot of the times you hear them saying, yeah, but that doesn't make sense, or this is not logical. They hide behind that, but what's actually just happening is that inflated sense of self-importance. What is sad, though, is that behind this mask, they're actually not sure of their self worth and are easily upset by criticism. So they don't take kindly to anyone that criticizes them or anybody that has a different viewpoint from the one that they themselves hold. They also have a very constant need for admiration, for praise, and for attention. And a lot of the times they also lack empathy. In other words, they cannot put themselves in other people's shoes. They cannot understand anyone else's viewpoint except for their own. And it's almost as though when you're speaking with them, you have to engage in an academic exercise where you come with research and where you come with facts, because for them everything is about logic. You have to prove to them why they should take your particular position. The fact that it's your personal opinion doesn't really matter to them. They also have difficulty understanding or caring for the feelings and the needs of other people. So by virtue of that, you can tell that they're also quite self-centered. It's always about them. It's always about how they're feeling. It's always about what their needs are. Everybody else's needs are supposed to be secondary to what their needs are. They also lack boundaries a lot of the times. And when we speak of boundaries, what we're saying essentially is that they expect you to think like them, they expect you to act like them. The second that you deviate from that, then it becomes a problem. They are also in love with a very idealized and grandiose image of themselves. So they always paint themselves as this perfect person who doesn't do any wrong. And if there is ever anything that goes wrong, they point fingers at other people. They are never at fault. They will never accept responsibility for doing anything wrong. It's always someone else's fault, someone else who is less intelligent than they are, or someone else that's a lot more illogical than they are. And that's why there's something that's going wrong. They also have this repressed feelings of insecurity. And you will see as we go how they actually become narcissistic. A lot of the times, it's actually because of the environment, the parenting, etc. But I'll get into that later on. So, what they then tend to do is that they feel very insecure, which is why a lot of the times they want to always be in control of everything that's happening. If they're in a marriage or a relationship, they have to be in control of their partner. Their partner must do what they want when they want. Their partner must cater to their feelings, must cater to their emotions. Otherwise, then it becomes problematic. The academic in me also then just loves giving definitions because I think it helps us just gain context and understand and gain new perspectives. So, what is a personality disorder? It's part of a group of mental health conditions. And when we speak of personality disorders, they are roughly about 10. And narcissistic personality disorder is one such disorder. And any personality disorder usually is characterized by persistent thoughts, emotions, or and behaviors which are harmful, firstly to the person, but also to other people. That's where it gets difficult, and that's why it's called a personality disorder. And a lot of the times, we can only diagnose somebody as having a personality disorder if two criteria are met. Firstly, they have to have personality traits that make it difficult for that particular individual to relate and to connect to other people or themselves. For example, how they respond emotionally to other people. They don't respond in a very positive way. They don't empathize with anyone. They never place themselves in anyone else's shoes. So automatically, that means they'll find it difficult to relate or to connect to other people. The second criteria is they have to have what we call it pathological personality traits, which keep showing up across many different situations. So, in mental health terms, what we call pathological personality traits refers to just thoughts, emotions, or behaviors that negatively affect how a person sees, how they relate to other people, and how they adapt to the world around them. So, the second they have such personality traits, the second they have a pathological personality, then automatically we can then diagnose them with NPD or any other personality disorder. So, what are some of the symptoms then? What does somebody that has NPD look like? They are usually somebody that's very self centered. But I need to caution here. There are two types, and I'll get into that later on again. There's a subtype when it comes to NPD or when it comes to narcissism itself. There is overt narcissism, which is out there, and then there's covert narcissism. So a lot of the times you may find that it's not always easy to diagnose, and any therapist with their soul will tell you the same thing. It's not an easy personality disorder to pick up because many people are also quite good at hiding. They are self centered a lot of the times, they are quite cocky and quite arrogant. But it's quite possible that they hide the arrogance. Are you aware that people can actually hide arrogance and pretend to be humble when in actual fact they're quite arrogant? For example, they may tell you, no, I drive a car that's relatively cheap, even though I can afford whatever car because I'm being humble. But that doesn't actually mean they're being humble. They're actually hiding their arrogance under the pretext of being humble. They're also quite manipulative and patronizing and quite demanding and very abusive. Now, this is where it gets tricky because remember, there's so many different forms of abuse. It could be that they are abusive on a financial level, but also obviously because of NPD on an emotional level. But they could also be abusive in other ways. They're controlling, they're manipulative, like we're saying. It could even degenerate into verbal abuse, it can degenerate into psychological abuse, and even physical abuse. They have no consideration for others, and they are quite resistant to changing their behavior, even when it's causing them or other people harm. So you find, for example, if somebody is in a relationship with a narcissist, even if you highlight the fact that, but when you do one, two, three, four, you are hurting me, they're not willing to accept that. They're going to try and argue their way out of that situation. Yeah, I hear you, but, right? So they again turn it into an academic exercise. And they're also all quite good at apportioning blame to others, except themselves. They never take responsibility for anything going wrong. A lot of the times, if something is wrong, it means that the people around them are wrong, or the people around them are the ones that are doing whatever it is that is making things go left. So, an example again, if you're in a relationship with such a person, then whatever goes wrong is your fault. Whatever is you're unhappy about is actually your fault, and they're not responsible. You hear statements such as, I'm not responsible for your happiness. You're saying you do all of this for me, but I never asked you to do that. So statements such as that would actually point to somebody that's quite narcissistic. They also do not accept correction or criticism. That's also another important symptom for us to pick up. Now, let's get into the subtypes of NPD. So, like I said, there are two types. There's overt narcissism, which is the most recognized type. It can also be called grandiose narcissism. And it's characterized by behaviors and attitudes that are arrogant, they're quite pretentious, they're also quite dominant. So they always want to dominate in every circumstance. They want to dominate in any discussions, any conversations, or any arguments if they are. They're also quite exhibitionistic as well. What do I mean by that? So they try and say, for example, there are other people that visit this particular couple where the one has NPD. Then they will try and showcase to everybody around that, listen, I'm a great partner. I love my partner and I speak highly of my partner. And yet in private, that may not actually be the case. So there's a lot of exhibitionism that's there. And then there's a lot of aggression as well sometimes, and self-assuredness that goes with the way that they carry themselves. And then the second type is covert narcissism, which is the less obvious type. And I actually think this is one of the most dangerous types. Why? Because a lot of the times it's characterized by behaviors that are and attitudes that are quite subtle. So you will not always be able to actually pick up on the go that this person is actually narcissistic. But a lot of the times they are anxious, they are overly sensitive to criticism, they are quite insecure, they become very defensive, and a lot of the times they're also quite depressive and withdrawn. And what we need to understand then about covert narcissism is even if it's less obvious than the first type, someone with covert narcissism still exhibits self-absorbed behaviors and secretly believes that they are superior to everyone else, and they still lack empathy, and they're still of the opinion that everybody else is wrong. They're the only person that knows what they're doing. They're the smartest individual in the room. They're the kindest individual in the room, and everybody else is a mess. So, what sort of traits do they have? Traits of a narcissist include entitlement. So they feel entitled. You should tell them things. You should make sure they're comfortable. You should support them. Your entire existence as an individual should be designed in such a way that you make their life easier, even if they are not willing to reciprocate. They also actually are quite pretentious in the sense that they only want to be around people who they deem to be important or special. And that's where they start putting on a show, and where they try and showcase this side where they're the best at everything they do. So they also love being connected to people that seem to be in important positions or in positions of authority. They also keep up appearances quite a lot. So they're the type of person, if you're not observant enough, you wouldn't know there's something wrong because they're all about keeping up appearances. People must not know what is going on. People must think that I am perfect. People must think that I'm highly organized. People must never think that I struggle with anything. And they also have this preoccupation with power and success. Everything is centered for them on power and success. And it then actually becomes quite catastrophic if they also have other obsessions, such as accumulating wealth or money. And they become quite frugal, stingy, actually, in most instances, because they're so consumed with having access to money and power and success. Nothing else matters. Even if they're in a position to make their lives or the lives of their loved ones a lot easier just by spending, for example, they are unwilling to do that. And again, they will hide behind logic, they will hide behind how they are frugal, they will hide behind how we must be organized and we must budget and. A lot of the times, also interpersonally, they're quite exploitative for their own gain. So, in essence, every single relationship they have is fashioned in such a way that it's supposed to benefit them one way or the other. Whether it's a friendship, or whether it's a marriage, or whether it's a relationship with associates that they work with, everything is fashioned in a way that helps them gain fame, or helps them actually gain a promotion, or helps them get connected to certain people who have access to certain resources. So it's never really about connecting to people. It's never really about caring for people. It's all about making sure that they gain one way or the other. They're also quite envious of others, or they actually have the false sense of belief that others are always envious of them. And they are highly critical of, and they look down on people that they feel are not important. So they become dismissive of other people. If they think, well, you're not smart enough, or you're not educated enough, or you don't make enough money, then they become highly dismissive of anyone like that. And they also then have a great difficulty in terms of managing their own emotions and their own behavior. A lot of the times they feel depressed and moody because they fall short of perfection. Remember, they always also just chase after perfectionism. And they have these secret feelings of insecurity, shame, humiliation, and fear of being exposed as a failure, which is why they're all about keeping up appearances. So a lot of the times they're very concerned about how other people look at them. They are very concerned about the image that they are creating. All of this is designed to present them as somebody responsible, as somebody successful, somebody that doesn't have any faults. That's what they're aiming for. And yet, inwardly, they actually have a lot of insecurities. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of humiliation, even, and there's a lot of fear. They're also quite withdrawn at times, and they also tend to withdraw or avoid any conversation or any situation where they feel they might fail or they might lose an argument. So, say for example, you start having discussions with them, and then they feel they're ill prepared, they don't have an answer for you, they quickly withdraw and shut down that conversation. And then they try and go and regroup. And then when they feel they have a point, then they come back and try and have that particular discussion with you, essentially because they have trouble handling anything they regard as criticism, which is why the second you start criticizing them, a lot of the times they simply shut down or they quickly withdraw from that particular conversation. And a lot of the times when they don't have their way, they resort to cruelty. So you hear statements such as, yeah, I'm doing this to teach you a lesson. I'm punishing you so that you learn. Statements like that point to somebody that's actually just quite cruel, somebody that lacks empathy, somebody that does not feel for other people, and somebody that is narcissistic to the core. Now, you may be asking yourself, what actually causes narcissism? Why do people end up becoming narcissistic? So it's a multiplicity of factors. And researchers are not quite agreed on what exactly it is. So there's a number of reasons, chief amongst which is the environment within which one lives, so the culture and the upbringing. And what we see is that if one is raised in individualistic cultures quite a lot, they tend to be narcissistic. Or if there's a lot of maltreatment during childhood, then again, there tends to be a lot of narcissism that develops. Another major important thing is major important cause rather is parenting. So parent-child relationships where there is too much criticism, punishment, withdrawal of love and support, or parent-child relationships where there's way too much adoration and way too much praise that does not necessarily match this child's actual experiences and their achievements, they also breed narcissists. So if you're a parent, you're going to have to be careful here. If you overly criticize your child, if you're cruel in nature, if you're abusive in nature, if you're the type of parent that never sees or appreciates anything that your child has done, they could actually become narcissistic as a response. In the same vein, if you overly praise your child, even when the achievement is not that great, but then you go all out singing their praises and they get used to being overly praised, they then develop this mentality that people are supposed to praise them, they're entitled to praise, they're entitled to adoration, and that's how they become narcissistic. Over and above that, neglectful parenting, where you're not taking care of the psychological, spiritual, physical, and emotional needs of your child, that can also result in a child becoming narcissistic in their adult years. Overprotective parenting, where you overshield this particular child, they're overly protected, and you go all out to protect this particular child. They're not exposed to the realities of everyday life. They live in this shell of theirs. That, once again, could actually result in them being narcissistic. Other people then ask, well, what other factors could result in one becoming narcissistic? Genetics also plays a role. And when we speak of genetics, we're saying there may be certain characteristics that can be inherited, but it's linked to the environment as well. If I'm raised by somebody that's narcissistic, chances are I might turn out to be narcissistic. Because according to me, when I'm a child, this particular adult is modeling the appropriate way of behaving. So I then look at that and I convince myself, oh, well, I guess this is how I'm supposed to behave. And yet, that particular individual could actually just be somebody that's influencing me in a negative way. Neurobiology as well. So in this case, we're referring to the connection between the brain, the behavior, and a person's cognition or a person's thinking. That could also lead to narcissism. Going through traumatic events and not actually receiving help for them, or being in an abusive situation for far too long. So long-term abuse can also result in narcissism. So what complications arise once somebody is narcissistic? What we then tend to see a lot of the times is relationship difficulties. Remember, if you're self-centered, if you think only of yourself, if you never accept any wrongdoing, if you never accept responsibility for any wrongdoing, and if you are logical about everything, it's never about emotions, it's never about how people feel, it's always about logic, what makes sense and what doesn't, then obviously you're going to struggle in relationships. And I want to be very clear here. People that are actually narcissistic do not have the capacity to love. I'll repeat that. People that are narcissistic do not have the capacity to love. Yes, they may get married. Yes, they may have children. But the truth of the matter is, when you actually examine whether or not they're invested in that marriage, whether or not they have an actual relationship with their children, the answer is a definitive no. So we also see problems at work or at school. We see depression and anxiety, as well as other personality disorders coming in. They may also then, in later years, develop physical health problems, drug or alcohol misuse as they try and cope with the repercussions of their narcissism, suicidal thoughts or behaviors, as well as a failure to actually maintain intimate and stable relationships. Because again, everything for them is about what works for them. They are not really concerned about the next person. There is also this failure to accept or to tolerate or to understand other people's views. Because remember, according to them, they're the smartest people in the world. They're the most logical individuals in the world. And so there's also this failure to regulate and understand their own emotions. And a lot of the times, they then is a failure to actually act on and respond to criticism and feedback. Remember, earlier on, we said they struggle to actually accept any kind of criticism or feedback. Now, you may be asking, is there a cure? Is there a pill that we can give someone and then narcissism disappears? Sadly, the answer is no. There is no cure for narcissistic personality disorder. What can actually help is therapy, because therapy then in the long term helps them develop certain skills and strategies that can help them change. But the sad reality is many of them never seek treatment. Many of them actually never recognize that they have a problem. And due to failing to accept responsibility, many of them actually then find no valid reasons as to why they should change. Because remember, to them, everybody else is the problem except themselves. And even when it comes to therapy, many of them find it difficult to stay in therapy long enough to lead to long term changes in behavior. Because again, everybody else is wrong. They're the only person that knows what they're doing. They're the only person that is logical and that does things that make sense. So it's a catch-22 situation for anyone that has NPD, because getting them to actually even admit that there is that particular problem is a mission and a half, because they might actually even fail to recognize that they have that particular problem. So how then do you identify someone with NPD? Unfortunately, there are no physical blood tests, there are no MRIs that we can do, there are no scans that we can do, or any exact determinations to identify narcissism. Um, but as therapists, we usually use the updated diagnostic statistics manual. I think the fourth or the fifth version now. And so that's how we're able to actually pick up on many of these character traits that people have and then come up with a diagnosis. But for you, part of what you can use is to determine this is a lot of the times this individual feels they have to be the best. A lot of the times they feel they're always right. They're the most competent individual and they do everything their way. They own everything and they control everyone. They also have this constant need for attention and validation. And how that comes across, they may actually love bomb you if you're their partner or if you're in their circle. They then become or pretend to be overly concerned about you because, again, they want to be seen in a particular light. They want to be seen as responsible. They want to be seen as being caring. They want to be seen as being, open and available to people, even though the actual truth is they're not. And a lot of the times they constantly say things to grab people's attention. So they may accuse you of one thing or the other, or say one thing that leaves you thinking, what the hell is going on here? They also believe in everything being perfect. So you should never make any mistakes if you're in their life. Events should always happen exactly as expected. And they make everything about logic and what makes sense and how they should be in control because they know best. And as earlier alluded to, they also lack boundaries and they believe that everyone should think like them and should feel the same way that they do. They also perceive everything as a threat or as a challenge that they must win. So they can't actually have a proper conversation with someone who's, for example, trying to make them see something they're unhappy with. It always becomes about them winning that particular conversation or argument. And they tend to then just look at anything negative, whether it's their own thoughts or their behaviors, they blame it on the other party. So, yes, I did this because you did this. I acted this way because you acted that way. They never actually accept responsibility for their own actions or their own behaviors. And they also take credit for anything positive. No, the reason why my partner is doing well is because I inspire this person. The reason why they're doing well is because I push them to do it. So anything that is positive, they claim it as theirs. Anything that is negative is everybody else's fault. It's never theirs. They also then often accuse their loved ones of being negative or being unsupportive. And a lot of the times, this is actually just due to their own anxieties that they would be going through. And they do not have the capacity or the motivation to work as a team or communicate effectively. Sure, they can pretend for years even, but the truth of the matter is they truly lack that ability to work in a team. And so a lot of the times, they're better suited to particular positions where they make decisions everybody else follows their particular decision. And yeah, like I said before, I want to repeat this. They can actually never truly love or connect to anyone emotionally unless if they get help. Because remember, everything is about them. Everything is about how they are logical and how they're the smartest person in the world. And everything is about their own feelings, their own thoughts. And they hardly ever try and zone in on what other people feel, how their own behaviors might be impacting those that are around them. So I want to stop there, just so we have time for questions, if there are any. Over to you, Dr. Kekan.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And I've been sitting here. I'm like, a lot of people who are listening do find themselves either on those definitions or either have came across somebody like that. It's a lot. I even asked that if people are okay in the auditorium, but they never asked. So I've got a few questions that I want to ask you, and I see. Let's start with let me try and appreciate Coach Low, Shelly April, who's also joined in and sending questions. If you want to send questions that you want us to see, please send them through In His Grace and Mercy platforms. Don't send them through Matsovani Facebook page. Just send them through In His Grace and Mercy. We'll be able to project them. We want to project them. So thank you, and let's also thank our co-host Ufina Podisa, who's also on the other side. There is a lot. So let me ask this question. Let me start with Shelly April. It says, good evening. Is there treatment available for this? How does one overcome this or help an individual overcome this? Over to you, sir.
So firstly, there's no cure. Treatment there is, because remember, treatment is about managing. It's not about curing. So the only treatment that is there, like I alluded to, is therapy or psychotherapy, if you may call it that. That's the only treatment that's there. But again, I alluded to the fact that many of them also just struggle to actually recognize that they have a problem. And so because they fail to recognize that they have a problem, they may not actually even be willing to seek treatment. When they do, sometimes they actually find it difficult to stay in therapy long enough for them to actually have long-term changes in their behavior and in their thinking patterns. But therapy is the only way out.
Yeah. Just to those that joined us, we started just after 7. This is a Thursday evening session on In His Grace and Mercy with Dr. Kekana and the MK team. We are talking narcissistic personality disorder this evening, and we just had our expert senior psychologist Sean Zimunya taking us through what seems to be a lot. So please bring in those questions, and I asked them that for those that they started on a big food, they didn't know we were going to discuss that, they joined in late, that maybe in a week after the next, on Thursday, same time, same place, we can take in more questions just to now discuss this as informal as possible. And then we'll have such a poster so that you can come in and ask a lot of questions, because this is quite a lot. At some point when you're talking, there's somebody who explained the story that they had an encounter. They got married to somebody who's narcissistic, and now as you're talking all those things and outlining them there, I'm like, you know what? Anyway, this person was really right. If this is what they observed and it comes out as clean as that, I gotta give it to them. So in any case, and some people, of course, they've been told at some point in the relationship that you have to have some, or even at work. But you heard Shelly. I wanted to ask you this question. So what happens if you now all of a sudden find yourself in a relationship with this person that you think that narcissistic? The catch is that they are logical like that, and they see themselves as smart. They don't see themselves as needing help. So now, where do I go? What do I do?
So the best way would be to try and show them, and again, I'm not saying you will succeed in this, but try and show them how their behavior hurts you. Because for me, my belief when it comes to relationships is always that when somebody actually loves you, they are willing to listen, firstly. Secondly, they are willing to learn. So if I then say to this particular person, listen, when you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it causes me a lot of pain. And then they start theorizing or they're unwilling to actually listen to what I'm saying, then that suggests to me that they're unwilling to change. And if somebody is unwilling to change, then you might be best served by actually just getting out of that situation. But I want to caution people not to rush to conclude, right? And that's why I was saying, let's not just rush to conclude that, someone is narcissistic. We need to look at the various traits that are there. I did say that it's only a qualified mental health professional that can actually diagnose. But the truth of the matter is, once you look at the symptoms, once you look at the traits, you can also just make up your mind with regards to whether somebody fits the bill or not. So it may be wise for you to actually also try and get them onto resources like this. Let them join, let them listen to conversations like this, see how they react, see if it lights a light bulb somewhere in their head that actually then gets them to wake up and realize that they have to do better, they have to change.
Oh, wonderful. Um, you said, and I'm coming to you now, Marian. I can see your question, and I can see your question as well, Coach, Law, the coach. I wanted to ask you, you said you need, according to, I don't know whether you were using a DSM-4 or DSM-5 now, you said you need 2 out of, all those characteristics to actually make a diagnosis, a clinical diagnosis.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, most of the guys feed that you can pick up 2, and
Yeah.
and just to highlight, you killed me when you said somebody would say, hey, if you drive a very cheap car and a small car while they park a very big machine.
Yeah.
They trying to portray being humble, but therefore they are actually narcissistic. So you need 2. So if people go back and see the presentation will always remain on Facebook in His Grace and Mercy, will remain on YouTube in His Grace and Mercy. That's the handle. You can look at it again and again and again and just see. But the take-home message about the diagnosis that gets somebody who's clinically trained to make that diagnosis.
Yes.
Okay, let's go to Marian. Marian says, good evening. How do you approach a conversation with somebody that has such as a narcissistic personality disorder characteristics? How do you approach a conversation? I think you touched on that.
Yeah, I think the wise thing would be to make it about how you feel, right? So, because remember, they see everything as an attack. So, if you go in and say, yeah, you did this and you did that, automatically they become defensive. So, make it about how you feel. So, you then go in and say, I'm a bit unhappy with regards to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It made me feel 7, 8, 9, 10. And then hopefully they would actually stop and listen to what you are saying. Because remember, to them, everything is about winning the argument. So they may actually fight back and say, yeah, but whatever you're saying does not make sense or it's illogical. For me, I think let's put it bluntly like this. If you tell someone they're hurting you and they keep doing that which hurts you, get out of that situation. It's as simple as that. Because and this is sad because many people convince themselves, no, he's gonna change or they're gonna change. But I mean, it's been years. Somebody is repeating the same patterns that hurt you, the same patterns that destroy your ego, the same patterns that destroy your self-esteem. And what we actually need to be careful of, some people actually find it difficult to pick up when someone is narcissistic because they've been groomed by this person. So what they do is that when they come into your life, they groom you and push you towards a particular way of thinking, a particular way of behaving, a particular way of acting. So once that happens, then you lose yourself in the process. But it takes someone else saying to you, but we don't recognize you anymore. Because you're in that situation, you may not actually realize how you have lost yourself, how you've lost your own values, and how you are in such a position in which you have become, it's almost like you become their twin sister or their twin brother, because you do everything they want. You are always fulfilling their needs, even if you have to ignore your own. And many people hide behind, well, in love, we must sacrifice, or in relationships, we must sacrifice. Can't you know what's actually happening is this person groomed you to think that this situation is normal. The same applies, for example, if someone is in an abusive situation, you are again groomed by the abuser to see abuse as a normal thing. which is why sometimes you'd hear people saying, well, I don't think he loves me because he's not hitting me. Because they've been groomed into thinking when someone loves you, they hate you.
They need to
So
hit you.
again, the second you find yourself in a situation in which someone keeps hurting you, even if you've raised it over and over again that they're being hurtful and they're not doing anything to change it, it may be time to get out of that situation.
Yeah. Lord, the coach says, oh, this is so insightful, but she's asking, how can one support them without allowing their behavior to break you? Yeah, that's quite tricky.
It's very tricky. It's very tricky. Very tricky because if you, and I think it's important as well, to be mindful of this fact. Do you actually have to be supportive? Because once you're being supportive, in essence, what you're doing is you're also enabling their behavior. So we need to be careful of that. If you say support, um, just make sure you're not actually enabling this particular person by doing whatever it is that they want and making sure that they are falling within the lines within which this narcissist wants them to fall. That's not support. That's because you've actually, again, been groomed into thinking in a particular type of way or acting in a particular type of way. But say, for example, you say to me, well, listen, this person is my brother. Well, you can't divorce your brother. That's the truth. But the fact of the matter is, we also need to be careful. Is your relationship with your brother or a cousin or a family member such that you end up actually suffering psychologically after engaging with them? If the answer is yes, I would advise that you disengage. But if you can love them from a distance, please, by all means, be my guest and try and do that. I'm not suggesting that we should leave them out in the wilderness or that we should cast them out and not love them. That's not what I'm suggesting. But just be careful of the particular position you choose to play in their lives, understanding that they themselves may not actually even realize they have a problem.
Yeah, we're talking quite a difficult
It's
conversation,
a complex one,
really.
and Doc, I must tell you, even for therapists, it's a difficult one.
It's
Especially making the diagnosis itself, because
yeah,
a lot of the times they actually come to therapy for other reasons. And then as you engage with them, that's when you start picking up that something couldn't off, something is not making sense here. And then you then apply, practice wisdom kicks in, and then sometimes you're then able to pick up, no, actually the root cause of the problem, this person is a narcissist. And even coming up with a treatment plan for such a particular patient or particular client is also quite difficult and quite complex. Because remember what I was saying, narcissism has both positive traits and negative traits. Some of them, positive traits they have, they do quite well in corporate, for example, because they are so focused on succeeding, they're focused on climbing the corporate ladder, etc. So these are people that outwardly seem very successful sometimes. People that seem very organized, they're married, been married for years even, have children, they may even go to church, they may even participate in that church, but bear in mind, for them, it's always about keeping up appearances. So even their presence in church might be because it fits with their image, the image they're going after of being a responsible person, somebody that is loving and somebody that is caring. But if you were to speak to their loved ones, they would actually tell you how it's difficult to get along with them. So it's a very complicated personality disorder.
yeah. I remember. The more you speak, I can tell you, the more you speak about this narcissistic personality disorder, a lot of people are thinking they're not doing well. That's why I kept on asking. Are we? When I was a student, long time ago,
Yeah.
there was a lady who was admitted in mental institution, Vescopies.
Hmm.
I think 5 or 6 times.
Hmm.
Up until Prof said, you know what? Who is signing this person in? And they brought in the partner. I'm trying to address this. That the coach is asking, how do you support them without letting them break you?
Hmm.
And we labeled a person, the wife in this case, to be psychotic or to have some personality disorders. But the actual person who was signing her in was the one who was ill. Until Prof says, let's look at this person. who's signing this lady in, and hear from them what is wrong. You know, the guy never left this copies that day because he had to be admitted, and the wife to be let go, because it becomes so difficult. And sometimes, you know, these people, you know, the organization, the achievement and everything, they do it so well that you yourself cannot even challenge their thinking capacity. Already on the balance of scale, when you look at how well they've done, you automatically trust the judgment.
Yes.
And then therefore, that's how they actually groom you, because you trust how the judgment they make. To say, you know, I'm doing this well, this is what I'm doing, this is a proof of I'm okay. There's a proof that you are not okay because you are not achieving what I'm achieving. So it becomes a lot of issues, and pulling the front, it takes a cup. The narcissistic people always want to have a picture perfect. That's what I call picture perfect. They want everything to look perfect in front of people, so that not even a single person can suspect that something is wrong with them.
Yep. And that's why it's dangerous. That's why it's dangerous, but also at the same time, that's why, you know, the example you gave, essentially what's happening is, according to this man, his wife is flawed. Mentally, she's not fine, because probably she's not doing what he expects her to do. Can't you know? He's actually the one with the issue. So that's why we need to be very careful. And I always say, and I'm quite glad, because in your particular church, you are on top of things like this, because we know the history of churches and how they've been used to cover a lot of abuse in previous times, and even in present day times, where people come to church and then he may even become an elder in the church, you know, because he's highly skilled, may even volunteer. I can be the treasurer because, you know, I'm qualified in finance or in accounting, etc. And everybody looks at this individual as the picture perfect husband, leader, etc. But if you were to engage with the wife on a one-on-one basis, well, that's if she's now liberated. If she's still under his control, she would also be playing along and making it seem like, you know, everything is perfect. And this is part of the reason why we always say, check in on your loved ones, whether it's siblings or whatsoever. In as much as they may appear to have everything under control, be observant and actually check, are they under someone else's influence or someone else's control? And I can tell you now with absolute certainty, people that end up marrying narcissists, it takes them years to get out of that situation, because a lot of the times they go through a cycle where initially, because of how they're groomed, they start thinking they actually have the problem. They're not good enough for their partner. They don't measure up to this partner, because that's essentially what he keeps saying to this woman, or what she keeps saying to this man. You're not measuring up, you're not performing, you're not being a good wife, etc. And they internalize that. And so they go through life thinking they are not good enough. Again, how is that working? Remember, I said they're also manipulated. So once someone says you're not good enough, automatically now your whole life is about trying to please them and trying to make sure that they are impressed by whatever it is you're doing. Which what then results? It results in you forgetting your own dreams, forgetting your own personal vision, forgetting your own purpose, forgetting why you're actually even in that particular marriage. So you end up building this particular person, supporting them in their career. Yours is not growing. You're not studying further. And a lot of the times, then they end up telling you things such as, I never asked you to support me. Who said you must support me? So it's a quite a tricky situation, but it's something that we need to be mindful of. The simple thing, and I think just in closing, let's just put it in this way. If somebody is not loving you in the way you want to be loved, have conversations with them. If they're not willing to change, there's no use. It's as simple as that. Even if we park the narcissism aside, if someone is not loving you in the way you want to be loved, but you're also, it's a two-way thing. You should also be loving them in the way they want to be loved. If that's not happening, and we have a conversation where we're saying, listen, this is not going in the way it should, and we can't find each other, there's no point.
As we wrap it up, some of the things don't need prayer. They need psychologists to refocus you, because you're going to start praying, and then all you need to do is a refocusing. This is In His Grace and Mercy, a Thursday evening corner. We kick it off with our senior psychologist, Sean Zimunya. We really thank you. I want to thank the MK team, the beautiful team that is behind the In His Grace and Mercy Ministries. We really appreciate you. And we appreciate the fact that you've been with us for so long. Let me bless you that you achieve your PhD. I know you didn't say I must tell, but I'm telling the universe. And in cum laude, so that next time when we fly with you, we fly so high. Ladies and gentlemen, let me thank you. So we agreed that you'll confirm with us the week after next, so that we can just come in and have these conversations that we're having around narcissistic personality disorder, because a lot of people are caught in that, and we fall into that, and some people fall into the hands of these people. And the first question we'll deal with when you come back the other week is, what do you do if you work with somebody like that? Can you go and report it that I think I work with a narcissistic person? What can you do? Because you don't have to enjoy that; it will break you, like the Coach DeLo said. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I would like to thank the Sauma HD Radio for again giving us this slot, allowing us that when we broadcast what we do best, doing it for our nation, they support the movement. Thank you to In His Grace and Mercy platforms for allowing us to broadcast. Thank you. Tonight we are so much educated, and thank you very much to Sean for being with us for the time that he gave us as we hit an hour mark on our clock. This is In His Grace and Mercy. I am Dr. Kekana. I am Pastor Kekana. Till we meet again, let's meet next week, Thursday, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. We just out of the time frame. And we'll also see you again on In His Grace and Mercy Ministries on Sunday, 7 a.m. till 9 a.m. This is Pastor Kekana. This is Dr. Kekana. Have yourself a good evening. And we thank you very much for all that tuned in, all the questions that send in. If you catch us late, just post the question on the tag itself. We will take the previous this week's questions and the week after next questions, and we'll deal with them the other alternating week, the week after next. On Thursday, we'll also ask Sean again to avail himself, our most respectable high panel psychologist, senior psychologist, to be exact. Till we meet again, good evening. We love you. This is In His Grace and Mercy from myself and MK team. Goodbye. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.